Hey guys, welcome to HipHughes History. We're back with another election. This time, we're hitting you up with 1916 Charles Evan Hughes, no relation, against Woodrow Wilson, reigning champ. So let's see what goes down in this big-time close election. And I'll say it real quick, giddy up for the road. The scorecard. It's a close one, guys. Woodrow Wilson snuck by with a 277 electoral win over Charles Evans Hughes' 254. In fact, California, which represented 13 electoral votes, voted for Woodrow Wilson by 2,800 votes out of 1 million votes. That's how close this sucker is. New Hampshire, which goes for the Democrat, right? That never happens, right? New Hampshire has gone blue. That was only decided by 56 votes. That's how close this sucker is. On popular vote, it's 49% to 46%, only a 3% margin right there. So this one is really close. Let's take a look at both candidates. We'll take a look at the issues, and then we'll wish you a good luck. So, of course, we have Woodrow Wilson, reigning champion. He was elected in 1912 with a very low popular vote total, like 40%, something like that, because he's running against a split Republican Party. You have the Bull Moose Party, the Progressive Party, running Teddy Roosevelt, and he's not gone. And, of course, William Taft, as Secretary of War, was running as a Republican. So Woodrow Wilson got really, really lucky, and now he's got to show that he is up for the challenge when it's just him and one opponent, really. And he's going to barely do that. His slogan throughout the campaign, he kept us out of war, preparedness, that he had stopped the Germans with the whole unrestricted submarine warfare business. He had kind of dipped his toes in what was going on in the Mexican Revolution, supporting various factions, but really keeping the United States out of that. So he's really selling himself as a progressive candidate, somebody who's fighting for banking reform and regulation and labor reform and regulation in the spirit of like Teddy Roosevelt, but as a Democrat. But he's also got the whole military thing going for him, that he has kept us out of war, and that is true. It's also important to note that William Jennings Bryan, he hasn't gone anywhere. He is vigorously campaigning for Woodrow Wilson, trying to keep together that Western element of populists, of farmers, on the side of Woodrow Wilson. And of course, Woodrow Wilson has the support of many factory workers who are, into labor unions, which Woodrow Wilson is supporting. And of course, he has that deep South. He couldn't do anything to lose that deep South, right? That's still that solid South post-Civil War. They're not going to vote for a Republican for many, many years to come. So he is running on his record. He's looking for re-election, and he's up against a Supreme Court justice. How about that? Charles Evan Hughes. Tell us something about yourself. Election. The Progressive Party, that Bull Moose Party that ran Teddy Roosevelt in 1912, they want Teddy back real bad. But Teddy Roosevelt, he doesn't want to throw this one to the Democrats this time. He staunchly refuses, he rejects the nomination, and the Progressive Party actually endorses Charles Evans Hughes. So who is this guy who hasn't really taken a stance on a public issue in 6 years because he's on the Supreme Court? So he's not a politician at that point. He is a moderate Republican. They didn't want to go too conservative. They didn't want to go too liberal, so they tried to get the just right candidate, and that might have been their downfall. He's going to hold together most of that kind of pro-business segment, but he did have a progressive streak. He goes on to kind of be a split decider on the New Deal. So he does believe in regulation. He does believe in some labor laws, but he's also a fan of laissez-faire capitalism. He's trying to ride the lightning here. And during that campaign, he probably didn't go too far to the left enough to get those factory workers to vote in the spirit of kind of that progressive Teddy Roosevelt thing. And Teddy Roosevelt, he campaigned, vivaciously, is that a word? He campaigned a whole lot for Hughes. He really wanted to get him elected, but it just didn't happen because Woodrow Wilson was able to claim that progressive mantle for the Democratic Party, and now the Republicans, after this loss, they're going to move farther away from the progressive side and really get into kind of conservative Republican economics, and that's going to be a whole different ballgame. So let's take a look at the issues that made this bad boy happen. Here we go. War Women West, WWW. We already kind of spoke about the war issue, but I think it's incredibly important to understand that the nation was really tense at that point. They really are still isolationists. They want to stay out of war. And Woodrow Wilson might have known at that point that we're going to be going to war, but he's running on this, we're prepared if we have to, but I'm going to keep trying to keep us out of it. Charles Evan Hughes actually stayed away from the war issue, so the war thing lands on the side of the Democrats as in the win column. Women is the other big one. Even though women aren't going to be allowed to vote, it sounds terrible, until 1919 with the 19th Amendment, there's more than a dozen states that have already expanded suffrage to the women population, and that's going to make a huge difference. If you look at the different vote totals from 1912 to 1916, with hundreds of thousands of new voters in states like California, it's really going to tip the balance. In San Francisco, women voted 3-1 for Woodrow Wilson, so this rash of new women voters is going to tip the scales. If they're not voting in San Francisco, women, in 1916, then Woodrow Wilson loses that election. So he did appeal to the more progressive side of the new women vote, and that worked for him real well. And of course, those western states, that's the last W. So let's say, for instance, a William Jennings Bryan running in 1896, you can see that he locked up some of the western states, but he really wasn't able to run the gauntlet. But now, you look at that map in 1916, you can see that the West is decidedly Democrat now, and like I said before, they're even sneaking up into the Northeast, grabbing New Hampshire by 56 votes or something like that. So a lot of states have changed. We haven't really changed the map all that much. We're going to start doing that really in 1932, but that should be enough for now for you guys to understand the very basics of why Woodrow Wilson beat Charles Evans Hughes. An interesting story. Woodrow Wilson actually had a backup plan that if he had lost that election, he was going to resign along with his vice president, and beforehand he was going to appoint Hughes as Secretary of State. And back then, the presidential succession would have put the Secretary of State third in line because they didn't want us to be ill-prepared with a lame duck session and having a president that wasn't ready to go to war, because Woodrow Wilson knows that bad boy is coming. But of course, he won, so we don't even have to tell that story again. So there you go, guys. If you haven't subscribed to HipHughes History, you can do that right now by clicking the big red button. I'm sick of saying that, but it's right there, and it's big, and it's red, and you can click it. And if you haven't checked out the election playlist, you can click right there. We've done more than a dozen, maybe 16, maybe 17 videos. I lose track sometimes. So if you want to visit the playlist, you can go right there. And of course, you can always go to www.hiphughes.com. Okay, I'm done selling myself. Guys, where attention goes, energy flows. We'll see you guys next time that you press my buttons. Scarahex, James O'Lantern. I'd say I would give you a shout out, so this is it. Tweeter peeps.